All right. Well, thanks so much for coming out tonight. We definitely appreciate it. Latest installment, Coffee with the Candidates. Mr. Jonathan Davis running for House of Representatives, District 71.
Yes.
Which is, of course, the district the bookstore's in, district I live in.
Mm-hmm.
So, of particular interest to me tonight. But anyway, so we've been starting these off with just a short Q&A between myself and the candidate.
Okay.
And then we turn you loose to speak to the folks that came out to talk to you.
Sure.
So first things first, a little bit of biography, background information, and how you got to now.
Background. Wow.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's a lot to talk about.
Sure.
Let's see. I grew up in a Christian home, a very political home.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the schools a little bit first. I was in Christian private school. I was homeschooled, and then I ended up at Walker High for my 4 years of high school. So I have a very different perspective, I guess, than normal people do on the school system, and I do believe in school choice. I believe that parents should have the right to choose how their child is educated.
Sure.
But growing up in a political home was a little bit different. I actually got to go to the convention where McCain became our nominee.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what really got me involved in politics in the first place. I actually ran for sophomore class president the year after that, so that was fun. And I did win, so I guess that was officially my first race. But a couple years later, in 2012, I decided that I wanted to run for Walker Alderman, which is now, we have a city council in Walker. That happened during my administration. So I wanted to change the world the first time that I ran for office. I thought, you know what, we need lower taxes, we need to support all the good things that the legislature and the federal government's doing, and we need to condemn whenever they do stuff bad. So I thought, why don't we just write some resolutions and support? I thought maybe a council member had a little bit more power than he actually did. And really, I thought about the state legislature being the priority in the future.
Yeah.
So I decided not to run again after I became a council member because I started working for Representative Valerie Hodges. I worked for her for about 6 years, and that's whenever I decided I really want to be involved in the legislature more than just helping somebody, but with an actual vote.
Yeah.
So I'm actually the Republican State Central Committee member, and if you're not sure what that is, I'm part of the Republican Party statewide for my district over in Walker. So I've been serving there for 3 years, almost 4. My re-election is next year.
Right.
Let's see. And I actually own direct mailing services, which does political mail and a little bit of corporate work.
Sure.
So that's a lot of my background, a lot of my biography. I'm actually a worship leader at my church as well. I grew up playing music at Victory Harvest Church, and now I'm at Crossway under Pastor Jeff Cambray, where I lead worship.
Awesome. Well, that's you in a nutshell. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you kind of answered the first question that I always ask everybody about why the race you're in. Why not another race? So you talked about that a little bit. So we'll just skip ahead to the next one.
Well, let me make one comment on that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
the reason I'm running for representative and not senator is because I believe we are taxed too much. And a tax can only originate out of the House of Representatives.
Sure.
So my goal is to be on the Ways and Means Committee and make sure that no revenue or no taxes get out of there alive.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go. That's even more details. That's great.
Definitely.
Well, what do you think is the role of a state representative? Do you think it is to try to reflect your constituencies' wishes to the extent that you can, or do you think it is to educate and lead and try to make decisions with the best information that you have going forward?
Well, I think there's a healthy mixture,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever you take your oath of office, you actually swear to protect and preserve the Constitution. So I'm a constitutionalist. I believe government needs to be as limited as possible in its power. I believe that we need to resort back to where we came from, what the Founding Fathers originally intended for the United States.
Sure.
And even if my constituents don't like what's written in the Constitution, I'm going to protect it anyway.
Sure.
Other than that, I believe I embody all the values that my district actually does. And I'm a statistics guy. We had 13% support for Hillary Clinton in the presidential election. All the rest went to Trump.
Yeah.
I was actually the youngest delegate to the Republican National Convention whenever Trump became our nominee.
Right.
So I did support Trump, with my vote in the election. I believe all of my values match those of everybody that cast their vote for Trump. So
Sure.
I don't see a difference between my values being at the legislature and the wide majority of the constituents that'll be voting for me.
Sure. Well, so our Constitution, our state Constitution, divvies up our legislative sessions year over year, going
Mhm.
between a general session and a fiscal session. So what would be your top priorities in each? What would be a top general session priority, and what would be a top fiscal session priority for you?
Well, this is a similar question to what I've been asked a lot, is what's the first bill that I
Right.
would like to pass? Just a regular bill, not a fiscal bill. My brother actually owns Louisiana Firearms. His name is Josh Davis. It's off Airline Highway.
Yeah.
I am a huge Second Amendment supporter, so I would like to propose a constitutional carry law. And that's been tried before, but I believe with those 60 open seats that we have and all the new people coming in the legislature, we can actually get that passed next year.
Sure.
And I don't believe people should have to pay to use their Second Amendment right. Now, as far as fiscal bills, there are a lot that I want to do. I think we need to cut taxes. We're spending way too much. Our government, our budget has grown, I think, 3 times in the past 15 or 20 years.
Mhm.
And we have nowhere near 3 times the amount of people in Louisiana to sustain that.
Right.
And we need to stop. We need to freeze. We need to cut spending. I actually think we need to go backwards. We
Sure.
need to start spending a whole lot less, spending money more smartly or more wisely.
Right. Well, you touched on the number of legislators that'll be coming into the next legislative session,
Mm-hmm.
brand new, freshmen.
Yeah.
So there will be a whole lot of new blood. With that, with great power comes great responsibility. I don't know if you've ever heard that one before. But so there are going to be a lot of big ideas that are going to be kind of front and center. One of them is definitely going to be the 2020 census coming up, and the potential for redistricting after that. So, what are your feelings on making sure that redistricting is done in as fair a manner as possible, and that it's reflective of the constituency, reflective of the voters that make up the districts?
So redistricting is a lot more complicated than just giving a short answer.
Sure.
So maybe I can go on to this later on, but each representative votes, or they trade districts, or precincts is what they're called.
Yeah.
And they have a certain amount of people, and they each have a different demographic. And it's very hard to really get the demographic that you want, because obviously you want to keep your position. I do believe we do have some standards, so we have to have precincts, so many minority inside the district.
Right.
But if you only have minorities, 20% minority in every district, then the precinct stays 100% of the time, because all you need is 51% of the vote to elect, your party again.
Right.
So that is a little bit, I don't want to say concerning, but it's a little odd.
Right. We mentioned you're a data guy, so what kind of role do you think data plays in breaking it all down?
Well, really, party is the biggest thing, but they do, go by race, age, all kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, another big thing, a big issue that's been kicked around the legislature in the past few sessions, and it's been, just kind of making its way around the rumor mill, of course, and then it is a reality of having so many new folks coming into the legislature. The potential for the call for a new constitutional convention. So you had mentioned, I believe during the chamber forum that you were a part of, that you would support a limited constitutional convention, provided there was a Republican governor.
Yeah.
What sort of limits would you favor on a constitutional convention?
Well, it depends on what we really need to tackle. We have way too big of a constitution right now. And, let's start with really what the delegates are going to be like, because I do want a Republican as a governor if we have one, but I don't want the current elected officials to be able to decide what's going to go in the next convention.
Sure.
I believe we need people that are very experienced in policy, maybe even some people from the last constitutional convention. But we need people that really know what they're doing, that care about limited government, and we need a voice of the people to really do that. I don't think all the representatives and senators should just decide, oh, well, we're going to rewrite the Constitution because we're going to rewrite it for us, not for the people. We're going to do whatever's easiest for us. And I say we, not me personally, obviously,
Sure.
but we as a whole body.
Right.
So,
Well, so how do you think those delegates should be selected? Do you think it should be an election by the people? Do you think they should be
absolutely.
appointed? How do you think?
I believe everybody should have the opportunity to run. Even the legislature in their own, or legislator in their own district should be able to run. We could easily have just as many districts as we do representatives and just have delegates from
Yeah.
those districts.
Sure. Well, what about, so my favorite topic to talk about is small business issues. Obviously, I own a small business, so it's
Yeah.
obviously something I think about every day. I live and breathe it
Yeah.
on a daily basis. So you had mentioned during the forum, again, with the Livingston Parish Chamber, burdensome regulation, burdensome taxes being the biggest impediment to both large businesses and small businesses.
Yeah.
So what would be some of the taxation and the regulations that you would be interested in rolling back specifically for small businesses like mine?
Yeah. Well, I'm a small business owner as well.
Yeah.
I own direct mailing services, like I mentioned earlier. Really, the biggest thing that's hurting businesses right now is the sales tax. We have the highest sales tax in the nation. And one thing that also hurts consumers is whenever they want to drive around. I guess I'll hint on the gas tax I hope we're going to talk about in the future. But in 2017, just after the flood, the legislature decided to propose an additional gas tax. And at the time, we were only spending 11 cents on the dollar towards roads and bridges. Everything else was going to who knows what. So I think if we really minimize the amount of tax we put on small businesses, it'll give them a chance to thrive. If we cut down some of the barriers of entry, like we have a lot of occupational licenses, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with the hair braiding bill. If not, it's very easy to find out.
Yeah.
You know how that went a couple years ago. Representative Julie Emerson is a friend of mine, and she proposed to get rid of the occupational license for hair braiding.
Yeah.
You can't charge somebody $5 for braiding your hair without getting a fine because you don't have an occupational license. That doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't make sense to anybody that's probably watching this video.
Yeah.
So we need to cut all the red tape out. I would like to reform our tax system, make everything much, much simpler.
Sure. So with that rollback of taxes, obviously there's a concern for how to fund things. You know, when the money's not going to be there, you have to make things either more efficient or do away with them. So are there specific things that you have in mind as far as finding those efficiencies?
Well, we touched on the Constitutional Convention earlier, and we have, I think, 9% of the funds for the budget that legislators actually can deal with. We go to the legislature with our hands cuffed.
Right.
We can only mess around with a little bit of the funds. I think we need to open that up, look at everything, reprioritize, cut spending, so we can stop taxing everybody to
Right.
death. You know,
Gotcha.
especially businesses.
Gotcha. The next thing that I want to talk about is something that you mentioned, the gas tax.
Yeah.
Infrastructure is obviously on everybody's minds. It always is. Traffic is always terrible.
Yeah.
So where do you stand
Very terrible.
on the gas tax?
Well, I am absolutely 100% against the gas tax. I believe I was the only candidate in 2017 that actually spoke in the committee against the gas tax. I volunteered with Americans for Prosperity, which is a fiscal accountable group. They've actually endorsed me. Their PAC has endorsed me.
Yeah.
I believe are supporting me, on the campaign trail, but I'm not allowed to talk to them due to ethics rules.
Sure. Well, yeah, I knew certainly that you would be consistent in that with the elimination of taxes and that sort of thing. What about the transportation backlog? Do you think that there are some things that could be honed in on, and in order to prioritize and try to get through some of that?
Well, I cited the 11 cents, a little while ago, the 11 cents on the dollar. I think that if we could move that up, we could pay for a whole lot more projects.
Sure.
And Florida Boulevard needs to be widened all the way through Walker, I believe. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. We don't even have a suicide lane or a middle turning lane. Not everybody calls it a suicide lane, but it's kind of
when
funny
you're in
whenever
one,
you
you call them that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So I think probably in District 71, the biggest topic on everybody's mind is drainage.
Yeah.
Flood control, stormwater management, that sort of thing.
Right.
So as a legislator, what sort of things do you have in mind that could help address drainage, both as the regional issue that it is, as well as helping, municipalities, parish governments move projects forward that will help protect people?
Well, luckily I was a city council member in Walker from 12 to the end of 16, and half of your job as a city council member is to deal with drainage. 99% of the calls that I received while I was in office was a constituent coming, wanted me to come out to their home, and they wanted to talk to me about either their culvert that's broken up or not up to code, or their ditch that hasn't been dug out by the city in years, and they wanted me to do something about it.
Right.
So I would try to help where I can. On the drainage level, we actually enlarged the culvert underneath the interstate in Walker prior to the flood, just as a part of our routine trying to keep drainage going.
Yeah.
The state actually denied our request to put more. They said it would damage the structural integrity, and I understand that. Everybody remembers a couple months ago whenever somebody fell through Cane Market because of the culvert collapse.
It was actually my aunt and uncle.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It was my aunt and uncle.
So definitely don't want an 18-wheeler falling through the interstate.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. We had a big wreck just a couple weeks ago because we didn't have a barrier between with two 18-wheelers and another automobile.
Sure.
But we need to do something about the wall. And if they're not going to allow us to have drainage underneath it, we definitely need to have holes in the wall.
Sure.
Right now there's some litigation, and I believe that's the biggest hindrance towards the state actually putting holes in the wall.
Right, trying to figure out where that's going to go.
And that's, I know a lot about drainage from my municipal experience, but I also worked for Representative Hodges for about 6 years, and she is the representative that led the fight for the Comey Diversion Canal funding.
Right.
And Congressman Graves was instrumental in helping with getting funding for that project. It was actually fully funded this February.
Yeah.
And around the same time, I resigned from her office and announced for this seat over here. She's over the Watson and Central area.
Right.
And she has a very large rural district. This district is just the city of Walker, city of Denham, and then a little bit out, just because there's so much population inside the cities.
Right.
Since I resigned from her office in February, she started working on the Darlington Reservoir, which is step 2 in my 3-step plan to make sure we never flood again. And hopefully we'll be able to get the watershed funds for the Darlington Reservoir. The third step is we do need emergency funding. Walker, Denham, the parish, we need enough money to actually take care of all these drainage issues, because it costs a lot, and that's probably what everybody's most upset about, is they don't have enough money to fix drainage, and it's not something that makes you money like a utility.
Right. Yeah, it's not a fun thing to talk about. It's not it's not a service that you need every day. You need it when it rains, but you really need it when it rains.
So I think I have a unique perspective on drainage just from my municipal and legislative experience.
Right, absolutely. Well, so in your race for District 71, you have several opponents. Everyone has, of course, different opinions and different ideas, but I do think that there's one thing that all the candidates agree on, besides the need for improved drainage.
Yeah.
And the thing that everybody seems to agree on is that there is a lack of faith in government.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
There's just a lack of belief in government's going to do what it says it's going to do. It's going to be able to execute in an effective manner and be reliable. So, as a legislator, how are you going to fix it?
How am I going to restore faith in everybody? Well,
it's just a small little thing.
If you don't hear a lot in the news about how bad your legislator is doing, you probably support them.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's been most of the time, whenever I was working for Representative Hodges, really only a lot of calls would come in if people didn't like something that she could have voted on.
Yeah.
And there are not too many calls. I don't believe there are enough people that actually engage with their legislators, and a big part of that might be not enough people know which level of government takes care of what problem and who really to call. So on all my mailers, I've actually put my cell phone number right on the front, so it's easy to call me. Everything that I've talked about on my mail pieces is something that the legislature takes care of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's risky putting your cell phone number out there because I'm definitely going to start texting you weird internet names.
Oh, right.
So.
Thank you.
No, but so the last question I have for you is one that I ask all the candidates. It's one that comes from our job application here at Cavalier House Books.
Yeah.
Of course, we're in a bookstore. We have to talk about books for a minute. So,
Right.
Give us the 2 books that have most influenced your life, one fiction and one nonfiction, and tell us how.
Mm-hmm. Well, every Christian is probably supposed to say the Bible, but since that's cheating, I'll go with 2 other books.
Sure.
Favorite fiction would probably be the Lord of the Rings series.
Oh, great.
I really like the good versus evil, the light versus dark, and everybody likes a little bit of fantasy.
Yeah.
But as far as nonfiction goes, I listen to Ben Shapiro a lot. I'm a huge fan of his podcast, and he actually came out with a best-selling book for at least a couple weeks, The Right Side of History. And he wrote it himself. You could actually get the Audible for that too.
Yeah.
That he reads.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's we do Libro FM subscriptions, so I'm sure it's on there too.
Okay.
But anyway, it's been great speaking with you. I truly appreciate you coming out to have coffee with us. And now the video portion will be over with, and I'll turn you over to the folks so you can chat with them.
Great. Well,
So
thank you
thanks
so
so
much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.